Glad to invite Viktoria Budanova, head of the Department of Work with African Countries, Sputnik Africa, Moscow, Russia.
Thank you very much, dear colleagues. Good afternoon, dear participants and distinguished guests. It's an honor for me to participate in this forum and to be the first lecturer here. So I will try to present you a picture of what Russian media are. So I'm head of Sputnik Africa, African department of one of the biggest international news agencies and radio, Sputnik. Though our media has its headquarters in Russia, we are an international outlet working in more than 30 languages for the audiences of different continents and countries. We are telling the untold. This is our motto. Telling the untold is crucially important today as we are facing numerous challenges on the information battlefield. Why battlefield? Well, you can clearly see that information provided by different outlets is quite different. And what we've been observing since dozens of years is the dominance of the Western point of view on what is happening in the world. But the only one point of view can't be considered as the only right one until it wins in a debate where different opinions clash. This is actually one of the main principles of democracy loudly proclaimed on the West, but which is not necessarily followed by Western countries when it comes to listening to others. Well, with the appearance of the multipolarity in the world, with the growing influence of the global South countries, the and information sphere changes definitely as our voices become louder, as we find ways to make our voices heard. And it concerns Russian media as well as African media. The topic of my today's lecture is media in Russia, Sputnik being a non-negligible part of this immense landscape. And what is known about Russian media in the world? I think this question looks a little bit like a question about Russia and what is Russia, because those who've never been to got the information from mainstream Western outlets, prejudice and bias about Russia. And it was a revelation for African journalists, our friends, that we invited to Russia-Africa Summit in 2023 to discover our country as it is, modern, highly digitalized, clean, peaceful, with developed infrastructure, with an awesome metropolis like Moscow. And the same, I think, with media. What is heard about Russian outlets outside Russia is that the most famous Russian media are all under international sanctions for not respecting the rules established by Western states, for giving another side of information silenced by mainstream. And you know, in Russia, there are more than 155,000 media of all types, with more than 1 million journalists working at. There are big media groups like All Russia State Television and Radio Broadcasting Company, like also Россия Сегодня media group that includes our news agency and Radio Sputnik. There is also Gazprom Media and many others, regional ones included. They provide different types of content, but always based on high journalistic standards. And this is the point I'd like to focus on. You know, Western authorities got used to blame not mainstream media for not satisfying journalistic standards, but it's mostly about monopoly on information, which is about to be broken, than about professional values. Russian media try to keep their journalistic standards high. They are aware of this necessity as information spreads quicker and quicker, also due to the development of artificial intelligence. In this context, the fact-checking is the first thing that we do and to do when it comes to analyzing and treating information. Russian journalists are taught to verify all information that they get, to compare sources, to choose reliable ones. They are trained to practice a responsible approach while publishing news. They also debunk false information and give explanations why it's fake. accuracy, lack of bias, balanced perspective. These are the values that we respect in our job. That's the first thing we at Sputnik, for example, teach new colleagues who join our team. And these are our working principles that we also share with our media partners during our training courses for journalists and young specialists from Africa, and as well as from other regions of the world. These courses have been already mentioned by my colleagues, are called Sputnik Pro, and you and members of your teams can easily join them. Just contact us. It's not difficult. The courses are dedicated to deontology of journalism and challenges to overcome for a journalist. Also to AI tools and their use for content creation and information processing and many other topics. This program, Sputnik Pro, exists since 2018 at Sputnik, and more than 100 countries and their media could benefit from it. We've just held courses, for example, for media of Chad, of Niger, and soon in May we'll have some courses for Malian journalists. It was online courses, but we have also interpersonal courses when we invite journalists to come to our Moscow office, for example. We organized a school for young African journalists before Russia-Africa Summit in 2023. And they had 1 month of masterclasses and practical lessons in the capital of Russia before attending the Forum in St. Petersburg. I've spoken about Sputnik Pro courses and our school organized for young African journalists before Russia-Africa Summit. They had 1 month of masterclasses and practical lessons in Moscow before going to the Forum in St. Petersburg. And it was a great opportunity for everybody, for us also to exchange experience with African colleagues. And we think that these kind of activities, it is important to hold, and it allows us to know each other better, to learn from each other, and for our African colleagues to see what Russia is in reality, and for us to get more information about our African friends and their habits and traditions. And in the world where fakes become not easy to reveal, we are sure that the truth is possible to get thanks to first-hand information. That is why we develop a correspondent net around the globe, Africa included. Russian media like ours have correspondents in zones of conflict. They risk their lives there in the name of truth. Since 2014, when the war in the southeast of Ukraine started, more than 30 journalists of Russian media died there. And 2 weeks ago, 4 more Russian war correspondents were killed in Ukrainian attacks. And one of them, Anna Prokofieva, journalist on the Russian federal channel Первый Канал, she was killed in a Ukrainian landmine blast. And she had worked before for Sputnik Mundo, reporting in Spanish, so it's Sputnik News Agency. She'd started covering the situation on the ground in Donbass while she was part of our team. And the news about her death touched us a lot, certainly. And unfortunately, she is not the only journalist victim of Ukrainian attacks. The spokesperson of the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Maria Zakharova, called it terror against Russian war correspondents that Kiev regime hunt down constantly. And a monument will be installed in Russia in honor of all these war correspondents killed during this conflict. Emblematic fact that UNESCO Director General in December 2024 prepared a report on journalist death, which didn't mention the deceased journalists from Russia. The Western minority, which didn't express condolences regarding the death of Russian journalists, has fully exposed itself, and the falsehood of future statements by these countries about freedom of speech will be evident to everyone, stated then Maria Zakharova. The UNESCO's report on the impunity of crimes against journalists in 2022-2023 was not approved finally, but despite Western pressure. According to the Russian representative to their organization, the majority of UNESCO member states didn't agree with the odious report, demonstrating thus the solidarity of the countries of the Global South. The letter to UNESCO about crimes against journalists was supported by hundreds of non-governmental organizations. And I will quote Maria Zakharova, who said that, who thanked everyone involved and concerned, who sent letters in support of their colleagues and expressed protests. Your efforts were not in vain, and the fake report didn't receive approval, but was only taken into account. The Western minority has fully exposed itself by not expressing words of sympathy for the deaths of journalists. And now every time any of these countries talks about freedom of speech and the safety of media representatives, everyone will know it is a lie. The media group Россия сегодня that I represent here, in a letter to UNESCO also and to UNESCO Director General, also demanded that the organization stop concealing facts about violations of Russian journalists' rights. The UNESCO draft report lacked mentions of RIA Novosti military correspondent Rostislav Zhuravlev, who died on the 22nd of July 2023 as a result of Ukrainian shelling in the region of Zaporozhye. So you see, while the West turns a blind eye not only on the situation of Russian media representatives in the Ukrainian conflict, but on everything concerning the Russian position in the conflict, the aim of the Russian special operation in Ukraine and its progress, our journalists sacrifice their lives for revealing the other side of this conflict. They become witnesses of the Nazism in Ukraine. They explain that Russia had no choice when it started its special operation, because civilians of the southeast of Ukraine suffered genocide. They witness also what Russian targets in Ukraine are. These are military targets and not civilian ones. We also fix facts of very cruel attitudes towards Russian prisoners of war, tortures, and that are filmed by the Ukrainian perpetrators and spread on social media. We also debunk fakes like famous Bucha massacre. Let me remind it to you. The city of Bucha in the Kiev region was the scene of one of the most notorious shams orchestrated by Kiev to discredit the Russian army. What occurred there was described in Western media as the Bucha massacre, and Ukraine accused Russian troops of killing civilians in the city and leaving piles of bodies in the streets after their withdrawal. But they were indeed victims. They are not fake, unfortunately. But who was responsible for this cruel act? This is the main question to clarify. The Bucha massacre becomes a farce due to the events preceding its unveiling, information that was completely ignored by Western media. I've tried to expose you what alternative contact we can provide you with on the example of the Bucha case, and maybe I will give you some details on this case because after the withdrawal of the Russian army, Bucha underwent massive shelling by Ukrainian artillery for 2 or 3 days. And, you know, while the army withdrew, there were no signs of bodies left on the streets. But after that, as I've said, Bucha underwent massive shelling by Ukrainian army. And according to correspondents working in the conflict zone, our correspondents, the Ukrainian military simply didn't notice the withdrawal of Russian troops and continued to bombard the city. Ukrainian special forces were then brought into Bucha with the declared aim of cleansing the city of pro-Russian collaborators, as widely reported by Ukrainian media themselves. it was only 3 or 4 days after the withdrawal of Russian troops that Ukrainian authorities gathered foreign journalists and showcased their staging with these bodies. So numerous facts and events indicate that the civilians in Bucha were killed by the Ukrainian army itself, either accidentally or deliberately, as pro-Russian collaborators. And you know, for these kinds of information, for providing all this information, many Russian media are now under Western sanctions. And curiously, not only media like ours that broadcast in foreign languages, but also outlets and channels reporting only in Russian. They were all blocked on the West and by the West. And I witnessed the moment when Sputnik and RT, Russian channel mentioned here today, this channel also reports in different languages. Our media were forbidden to carry out their activities in Europe when the Russian military special operation began. And it took 1 or 2 days for Brussels to announce the ban. There were no proofs of our illegal activity or whatever, but the ban, we were banned. Our Sputnik's editor-in-chief, Margarita Simonyan, commented repeatedly that freedom of speech was a beautiful myth of the Western world, while a monopoly on information is evil because one-sided coverage of events leads to terrible consequences. And that is why our mission at Sputnik is to tell the untold about what we see with our own eyes and hear with our own ears. And it bothers in Western countries. But we notice that we are very welcome in Africa and we appreciate it a lot. Thank you, dear friends. Our content is popular in African countries. And let me give you more details on our work. I will try to show you a small presentation. What is Sputnik? Sputnik is a news agency, international news agency and radio, one of the largest in the world with more than 30, it is written here 20, but now we have more than 30 languages of broadcasting and reporting. We've just added Amharic here and Indonesian also languages, and we will develop it to local languages, African languages. So we have about 160 accounts on social media with 26 million of subscribers. Our radio audience is more than 200 million of users, and we have about 15 offices all over the world. Here you can see the map of our offices, of where we are located, and you can see that there is an office in Addis Ababa, and actually we've just launched this representation in Addis Ababa in the presence of the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Aginyeho Teshager from Ethiopia, and his counterpart Valentina Matvienko from Russia. It was a great event for us, and now we are full of energy to continue our work in Amharic as well as in English, to provide the Ethiopian audience with good quality news and good quality information. We will be able to open soon, I hope, other representations on the African continent, like, for example, in South Africa, in Tanzania, in Nigeria, or in the Western Africa. So we hope to proceed to it soon. It takes a lot of efforts and time, but we do our best, and we hope to launch it very, very soon. We have already our correspondents all over Africa, and we broadcast our programs. Here you can see our resources, And for example, radio, we produce radio programs in French and English for now, and we broadcast it on local radio stations in 7 countries already, like Botswana, Zambia, Nigeria, Cameroon, Mali, Niger, Nigeria, Guinea, and soon in Ethiopia. So we develop it very actively. We have websites, applications, social media accounts. Our guests are high-level politicians and officials, ministers, influencers, stakeholders. So we have interviewed a lot of politicians from all over Africa, and we've launched our African department 2 years ago, but we've already interviewed more than 10 presidents of African countries. Our radio programs are dedicated not only to geopolitics, but also to African topics like history of Africa, made in Africa, traditions and modern life, African people's identity. So you can find everything in our radio programs and podcasts, and also on our internet platforms that we use. I invite you to see also a small video of support from our speakers, from our experts and politicians that we interview.
Sputnik Africa, we congratulate you guys for holding the fort.
Vous savez que Sputnik aujourd'hui jouit d'une crédibilité à nul autre pareil. They will try to isolate, to gag you, but I think we must pay the cost.
Ce sont des suspensions qui ont été faites au mépris de toutes les règles, même les plus élémentaires en matière de liberté d'expression.
Le monde doit accepter la diversité des opinions.
Agencies like yours should continue to project this image of Russia so that the world will know that it's not the Russia that we hear from the Western media.
Sputnik's presence in Addis Ababa will definitely be a plus.
Donc, on a besoin pour travailler ensemble, vous allez pouvoir nous apporter parce que vous avez une expertise.
What could you wish to our agency, Sputnik?
Success.
Your energies and your voices will be, and when it gets to be, the world will reverberate with joy.
Could you perhaps send a message to our viewers and listeners?
So, yes, and not only politicians and our experts speak about us, but also mainstream media and Western institutions like NATO, External Service of European Union, and so on. And here you can see some quotes from their publications. For example, Sputnik and RT, this is Moscow's way to expand across Africa. At the same time, the reach of Western news outlets has been dwindled on some parts of the continent. And also one of the most interesting quotes is about Wagner. Sputnik's efforts for the African audience create more powerful influence than what Wagner can achieve. I think you know what is Wagner, but we try to provide you with a good information. And you can see that it was written by the Belgian RTBF, and the first one by New York Times. So you have some time to read other quotes, but recently we were mentioned in the NATO report about threats and dangers for Africa, as well as by other institutions and think tanks, Western think tanks. We are proud of it. It's the proof that we do a great job, and we do it also using a lot AI, artificial intelligence. Here you can see what kinds of instruments we try to use. It helps us to produce content. It helps us to transcribe, to translate, to add subtitles, to voice-over texts. But also we can, with the help of it, generate images and videos. And we are also proud to say that we have in our team virtual hosts, and I will present you a small video of our virtual host team. a bit later. So an illustration of how we use and how we can use AI for the needs of journalism, for high quality, producing of high quality content. I will also show you a small video.
We see Africa as a distinctive, dynamically developing continent, a continent of the future. Tunashikamana na kuimarisha nafasi za Afrika katika muundo wa ulimwengu wenye mwelekeo wa pande nyingi, zodat die een onafhankelijke stem van Afrikanen in die internationale arena gehoord en in acht genomen wordt. Don wana tunaenda kebukata sunachikimuri. Mbadi ishe na Afrika nwere uwe anya ikbawanya magboroguna ndoro oshishi. إنهم يحققون نجاحا كبيرا في مجال الاقتصاد. As relações russo-africanas foram verificadas pelo tempo. Notre pays a toujours soutenu sincèrement les Africains dans leur lutte pour la libération du joug colonial.
So you could hear our Russian Minister of Foreign Affairs, Sergei Lavrov, speaking different languages that you can hear on the African continent. And it was done with the help of AI. So this is the voice of Mr. Lavrov, but he speaks, the translation and the voiceover is done by AI. I think he speaks a lot of languages, but not so much. That's why in these cases, AI can help us with it and can help us to translate each declaration of our minister and to give it as quick as possible. And the last video, it's about avatar creation or virtual host that we have in our team. They are really virtual, so you will see they look like real journalists, but no, they're virtual. Sorry.
This is Sputnik Africa's virtual presenter.
Ici Anna, présentatrice virtuelle de Sputnik Afrique.
نهاركم سعيد. معكم مايا. Olá, meu nome é Zuza e eu sou a apresentadora virtual da Sputnik Brasil.
大家好，我叫丽卡，我是俄罗斯卫星通讯社的人工智能主持人。
Dünyanın tek doğal uydusu olan Ay'a yolculukta 11 ülke Ay'a gitti.
Hola, soy Tania Sputnikova y hoy les traigo un nuevo análisis de la geopolítica mundial.
So this is Sputnik, and we are telling the untold. And I'd like to return to our mission, especially in Africa. Our goal is to provide audience with balanced information and give a floor to representatives of the global South, who are not often of interest of mainstream Western media. We also provide with an alternative point of view when there is a need to show another side of a story, to counter propaganda. And we also do it with the help of our media partners in Africa. We have established already, I think, dozens of partnerships with African countries and with media of African countries from all over Africa, and we will continue this activity. In the frame of this cooperation, we exchange news, we exchange our radio content, and we also provide with training courses I've spoken about. So we have a lot of activities, and I think together we'll continue do this great job, and it will let us be heard in the world louder. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Виктория. Спасибо большое, Виктория, за интересную лекцию и рассказ о спутнике. So I hope that we continue soon, yes, in Addis Ababa, and I just would like to say a few words that we also invite our participants to join tomorrow at 12 p.m. to our lecture about Russian education in Russia. And the speaker will be Maxim Zalivsky, head of the project office of the consortium Russian African Network University. That is also our partner. And this is quite a big consortium of universities that work together. And we would like to invite everyone who would like to know about Russian education and the work of this consortium tomorrow to join us online.